All right. So I'll start in a couple of minutes, and I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Sure.
There's Claire. Hi, Claire. Don't be shy. Turn on your cameras. Come say hi. Hi, Vinka.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Happy New Year.
Hello.
Oh, Happy New Year to you too. Have you recovered from the festivities?
Yeah, there's at my age, it's I'm happy if I make it to midnight. It's not anything to recover from anymore.
I think I actually went to sleep last year before midnight.
Yeah.
Can't tell you the number of years I've gone to sleep before midnight. It's embarrassing.
They wake me up at midnight. My kids, they wake me up at midnight.
Every time nowadays I do drink a beer or two somewhere, then I'm thinking like, is it really worth it? Because if I go beyond two, I can feel it the next day, and it's really,
And the day after.
yeah, it's not interesting.
But the non-alcoholic beers are getting better.
Oh yeah, maybe I should
Yeah.
try them. Maybe I should try them
I
again.
haven't tried, to be honest.
We've been drinking one's called Blue Moon, Blue Moon, which is a Belgian style beer. You understand why I drink that. And the
Yeah,
other
well,
one
you
is,
can't go wrong with that, I would say.
the other one is, I'm taking it out of the refrigerator as we speak, Athletic Brewing Company. My husband picked it up just the other day. Let's see if I can get it.
Athletic.
Is it honing in, or it's not honing in?
No,
I can't see.
I think you have your background blurred out, so it's not.
I probably do. Yeah. So
but that's
let me
all right.
see.
I've written it down, Athletic.
Athletic and Blue Moon. Blue Moon has one also. They're both Belgian style.
Awesome.
So, nice wheat beers with little citrus orange kind of flavor. My favorite kind of beer.
You put a lime in it or a lemon in it?
No, you put an orange in it.
Yeah.
But it already has that orangey taste.
That's
Bonne
new,
bière
actually.
belge.
Yeah. I never thought about putting orange in a beer.
Yeah, a lot of the wheat beers are nice with orange.
Yeah.
Okay.
My good friend Dunya from Italy. So excited to see you. I haven't seen Dunya since September, I think. We last saw each other at the Women in Localization celebration in Austin, Texas. Dunya, turn on your microphone and say hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How's it going?
Hello, nice to see you. Nice to see you. You always have these meetings on Friday evenings at 8 o'clock. Tonight I have no dinner parties over here in Italy, but it's always a difficult time for me. But anyway, I'm here today.
Good to have you here, and I see Anna is here as well.
Hi, Stefan.
Hey, how's it going, Anna? How are things at Target?
All good, quiet.
Oh, well, that's good. We're taking advantage of it then.
Finally, yes.
All right. Good. I think we should slowly get started. Hey guys, do me a favor. If you're not shy, turn on your video so we actually feel like you're participating, because that's kind of the idea of the loop discussions. We're a networking group. We're not just doing a webinar, and it's good for people to see you're there and participate. Don't be shy to ask a question. I am notoriously bad at seeing raised hands, and I also grew up in Europe, where people are not nearly as polite as in the States when they ask the word. So just chime in if you have something to say, and if it's inappropriate or you have to wait a minute, I will tell you. But feel free to join in at any time with a question. We have a very, very special guest today. Mr. Didzis Grauss is the CEO of, or the founder, I should say, Didzis of Native Localization in Latvia, and a leader in LangOps, and that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. And maybe I will give him a minute to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. Go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Yeah, my name is Didzis. I come from Riga, Latvia, and yeah, I'm one of the founders of Native Localization, who started as a translation agency, as a language services provider, but at some point we switched to doing things the LangOps way. So I personally am responsible for the growth, and this means both technological and expansion in general. But yeah, my passion is looking at localization in terms of it being closer to software development, and that's where all the concepts of LangOps come from me. And yeah, it's exciting to talk to you about this topic, because I think there's a lot of questions about it, and yeah, definitely exciting times to be in the industry.
There, I muted myself there for a second. Technical issues. So let's dive right into the topic, shall we?
Sure.
LangOps. What is LangOps, Didzis? What should we understand by it? Why is it important to talk about at this particular moment in time?
Yeah. The beauty of LangOps is that it can mean different things to different people. LangOps consists of so many different components, and when I think about the basics of what LangOps actually is that I like to use the words of Jochen Hummel, who's actually one of the founders of this concept, is that a while back we used localization to bring content to people, but now our communication is two-sided. The people actually talk back, and and LangOps basically deals with this two-way communication between you, between us as the what we are trying to say, and basically also listening to what the clients are what the users of our clients are telling us back. So, and above all, LangOps tries to facilitate two-way communication between these two sides, and tries to do it as efficiently as possible and as quickly as possible.
What makes it so different to the concept of bi-directional communication? Why is it such a game changer, if you want, in localization?
Yeah, if you look just a few years back, basically what businesses and companies did is that they had a localization strategy. They had certain approach to how they want their content to sound, but nobody actually took into the account of what would happen and how we can take this a step further and actually establish some sort of communication between our users and the messaging that we are trying to say. So I think that's the biggest difference between localization and LangOps, that what we are doing actually is not just telling our stories to the world, but actually listening back. And our clients, they don't just use words to communicate with us. It's also the data of the behavior of how they use our content, and actually the journey, how they travel through our content, is actually also telling us something of what's the best way to approach it. And so yeah, I think data is a big part of LangOps as well. So we just listen not only to the words, but also to the actions of our customers.
And what kind of different solutions does that force you into? Is it just a matter of being multi-platform? Do you think? I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what is different from the past, so to speak.
Yeah, so practically what it means is that a big part of what we do is we introduce data into the localization workflow. So, for example, there's a possibility to deploy a minimum viable localization product to essentially gather data on the audience, that how they are approaching your content, which languages are used the most, which languages have the most users, which types of content does the users look at the most. So after that, having all this data allows us just to look at localization more purposefully. We actually can see and invest mindfully and make our human work actually mean a lot more. So our linguists and professionals are actually valued for their expertise rather than just being able to type words and adjust the text. So what we see, this is a huge value of highlighting the value of the human input as well.
Okay.
Stefan,
Yeah.
I have a question. As I'm hearing all of this, I'm hearing a lot of product management terminology. So just wondering how product plays into LangOps, if it's part of it, or how is it the same? Are they?
Yeah.
How product plays a part in this?
Yeah. So this is a huge passion of mine as well. Thank you for the question. The concepts of DevOps actually, for me, comes from studying LangOps. Actually, the other way around, the concepts of LangOps actually, for me, come from studying DevOps. So what we try to do when we perform software localization is we try to bring these concepts closer to software development operations. So what we can do, we try to make localization not just an annex procedure at the end of the product development cycle, but we try to align the terminology and the processes closer to what product people are doing. And so that means that it opens possibilities to start testing features and testing things that you would like to implement in your product roadmap a lot quicker and do it on a global basis. So I'm sure product always gathers data before it's released, but now it can be done on a global scale. So it just adds another layer of data. So I think that's a huge value of LangOps.
You have any concrete examples of that, Didzis, that you can use to give us a practical example of the kind of things that this brings along?
So what we did for one of our clients is that so their content consisted of their having a platform for fintech. It was an investment platform for basically managing finance for finance investments for smaller companies. And what we did the localization as we would do normally for the platform, but then there was this other vertical of help content, all the learning center stuff that actually allows their users to use their product better. So what we did is, in order to save money and just to make this all more purposeful, was to deploy this MVLP concept, which actually derives from minimum viable product of DevOps. That essentially what we did, we trained a very specific AI model using clients' data from the platform localization point. So actually what we did, we took all this data and trained the models to be very specific custom-made AI translator for that company. I'm not saying that this is the final point of how the client-facing content should look like, but what that did was it allowed us to deploy this model on all the languages for the help content, and then we started gathering data and actually seeing how their clients read about their product and what languages and what articles stood out the most. And based on that, we created reports suggesting how to cascade the investment in localization. And actually just we saw that there are priority languages, some middle priorities and some lower priorities that allowed us to approach human post editing in a more purposeful way. So yeah, that's how we practically use this model.
Very interesting. I have a very dear friend of mine in the audience, Alexander Pisaruk. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Alexander, you want to ask your question? We'd love to have you come and ask the question directly if you could. He did not leave us, did he?
Stefan, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Go
no.
ahead, and then we'll come back to Alexander in a minute.
I just wanted to basically understand, basically he's mining data, correct, to better answer the exact questions of the users of the platform, right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please? The beginning of it.
Yeah, you're basically you're mining for data. You're looking for data that could to better understand what the queries, what the user queries are, to better answer their exact questions. Is this the purpose? Correct? To my understanding?
No, we are not doing any data mining. That's something that we do. What we do is that we take the content that we have translated and what the client has approved, and actually use that data from the platform translations, and we use that to train the AI model to then post edit the machine translation of the help center content. So the model learns from the translations that have been human and client approved, and we use that to post edit the machine translation content of the help center.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So maybe we can talk a little bit more about the AI aspect of this as well, because I'm not sure that was 100% clear when we looked into it the first time. So explain a little bit how AI fits into this model, Didzis.
Yeah, so the way we approach AI is that we don't use it as a single component for translating content. What we found to be more useful is to have the machine translation first, and then use the model that we've trained on the client's data to act as a post editor to the machine translated content. So yeah, so that essentially allowed us to create this so to say artificial specialized translator. So in cases when there's no translation data available, what we do is we try to fine-tune it based on the other linguistic requirements that we have agreed with the client.
Okay. Olex, are you ready to ask your question?
Hey, Stefan.
There you go. I knew you weren't that shy. If I kept calling you out, you would
yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. Cool discussion. I'll just verbalize the question I typed in. Nothing too specific there. Could you please name some of the specific concepts of DevOps as a discipline that you implied that are similar to LangOps? Basically, that's my question. And this sounds like what we've been discussing anyway, but yeah, some specifics.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I very enjoyed following your content as well on LinkedIn. So what we look at is the basic principles, because all this is rather new for us as a business as well. So CI/CD workflows is something that translates very well from DevOps to LangOps as well, because that's something that we've been doing in localization for a long while as well. So that's one of the concepts. So this MVP concept that came from DevOps is something that basically is allowed because of the CI/CD principles that come from DevOps. So we mostly work with this, and then we are trying to apply some testing practices as well, basically looking at how testing is done in DevOps and trying to just maybe make these testing practices somehow apply to localization as well.
What's the biggest advantage of this MVLP methodology, you would think?
The biggest advantage for us is just having what we try to call it as a good enough translation to start gathering data, and that's something that I think is the biggest value of MVLP. When we deploy it, there is some content that actually users start to use. It's higher degree than it would be just by being just a simple machine translation. It's a better entry point for our human post editors as well. And those I would consider to be the biggest points of value for the MVLP, essentially having a better translation to start working on, and actually having the ability to read the data of user behavior throughout the system that we deploy it on.
Yeah, and I actually already 2 years ago, I think I heard Scott Schwalbach at Amazon say something very interesting about quality assurance in the localization projects that he was involved in, that tended to veer away from the traditional linguistic quality assurance to a review of the engagement that whatever localization project would get once it got published. And if there wasn't a serious uptick or a slowdown of traffic in the web content, then Amazon would essentially conclude that there was no need for linguistic QA anymore, because essentially it's kind of the same concept of it's good enough to be up, and it doesn't need to be reviewed anymore linguistically in depth, so to speak. I think that what you're outlining here is kind of along the same lines. Alexander, what's your experience with this type of conceptualization of a change in QA? Is that something that you have seen in the work that you've been doing the last couple of years? Is there the same type of methodology that you've employed, or are you still reviewing linguistic? Are you still doing QA linguistically very thoroughly?
Good question. Let me do this. We've done in my past engagements, have done what you are hinting at, the data. So I have a kind of a response and a question here. The response is, yeah, we were attempting and successfully to track translation-related data that you store in translation tools. Think of like a TMS, and it has a database, and in a database there's stuff about what you do. That stuff is exported into like a tool, commercial, like has nothing to do with translation, like think Google, think Tableau. And then there's a data about the performance of the content that you translated, like did people click on the website, and you take that data from the performance tools enterprise, and you correlate two pieces of data. Then you see what happens. Is that the thing you're describing, the data? I was curious to ask about the data. Where's the data? Where is it combined? How is it correlated?
For the most part, what we are currently working with, as this is a quite rough concept for us as well, we look at to introducing the Google Analytics workflow into this whole automation, and what helps us with that is our backbone of the system is Blackbird, which
Oh, yun
essentially
nandito eh.
Bruno, I think 2 years ago,
Apo.
presented a use case where they introduce Google Analytics step into the automation, allowing them to just create a delay trigger of,
I'm trying
I
to
don't know,
figure
3
out
to 4
who's
weeks.
got his microphone open, Ron. You see, somebody's got their microphone open.
So
If
yes,
you
so
could
far,
mute yourself if you're not speaking. Thank you
so
very
far
much.
what we've been applying it to the descriptive content types, such as I described before, the help centers, the wikis, and things like that. That is the supporting content for the product, because it's one of the simplest entries for analyzing the content. So we've been working with more or less descriptive content and using Blackbird as the basis of accessing Google Analytics data on each of the markets that we deploy this MVLP, and yeah, that's how we go about it. And essentially, that just allows to see it can be automated. For example, if there's a I don't know, blog post in French, for example, and it goes over 500 views, it automatically goes back into human in the loop, and yeah, different things can be done, and also we can create reports based on that, and allowing our clients to just pick and choose and do this investment in localization more purposefully.
Yeah, all clear, sounds good. And this does sound like a minimal product. So you've experimenting with this works on a scale that you experiment with. I wonder how this scales. Huge context and huge localization operations. Yeah,
that's a good question. I think the scaling comes from how efficient we can run these learning scripts, and how efficient can actually the engine perform against the machine translated content, and how it all ties together in a TMS, basically the string management system. And I think that's where the scalability hides. For example, now we are looking at I think our engine does around 650 to 700 words a minute of post editing of the machine translation, and but it's bound to go up as we try to optimize. And yeah, and currently, as I said, we are working with systems that exclusively present content rather than just being these dynamic systems. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, and we'll probably see at some point if there are some huger problems with this. And yeah, so far for this current situation, it looks good. We'll try to push as fast as far as we can in terms of being the supportive type of content, but then we'll definitely look into how it can apply to this dynamic content as well.
What does this all mean for the user experience, you think? What are the possibilities for the user experience?
That's a good question for you, for users. I've never actually considered this to be like the final user-facing content. What it probably allows is to just again track how these users are traveling traveling through this content, and actually maybe that provides some information on how these textual adjustments could be made. But for users, I think it's maybe a quicker way to receive a final localization product for their market where the visibility is the most. I think that's the markets that actually use the content the most will receive the final product sooner.
Yeah, I think Nate, you had a question. You raised your hands. Please, if you have a question, speak on up. Don't be shy, because you're very lucky. I saw it. I'm telling you, I'm not that great.
All right, sure. Thank you very much. I just had a quick question. Excuse me, I don't have much voice this morning. What has been the response and feedback been like from your post-translation editors? Have they dived in and shared things that they enjoyed, or given specific feedback about how it's working for them?
Yeah, you mean the translators that work on already the post-edited content, right?
Yeah.
The difference, as you can imagine, was different. Basically, it varies between languages, but if we, for example, work with languages that are the most popular European ones, there's the parity in the entry point for translators actually seems to be very good, because what we try to do is we try to be very transparent of what this is that they are working on, and actually just trying to listen to them and identifying if this is viable for that language. And for now, we've tested, I think, 13 languages, and it's been moderately successful. We are carefully happy about this.
Cool. Have there been any things that they have said, for example, this part of it is really, really good and useful, and then maybe this part of it we didn't understand or need to improve?
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand with what kind of content it is, and sometimes we try to use the machine translation as the sanity point for the AI, and in terms of errors, that basically what they report, there are some segments that they just need to rework more than others, but I think the longer the content gets, and I think that's the biggest correlation. When the longer the content gets, the more issues come up, and that might be the cause of maybe the machine translation not doing it right in the first place.
Sure.
Yeah. So what we do with these QA tests, we try to look at case by case and try to understand if the issue lies in the AI or the MT, or maybe just the language structure in general.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Can I piggyback on that?
Absolutely.
So I'm more interested in, if you're using the machine translation in AI, so what Nate was saying, or the feedback that you're getting, I'm interested in if the feedback or the issues are syntactical issues or semantical. So as a linguist, I want to know if the machine, because sometimes, of course, machine translations or AI, if you don't train them properly, right, they can never get the semantic part of the sentence, right? So I'm curious if the feedback, and depending on the language pairs, if it's something that we use here, for legal, sometimes if it's something that it's standard, the machine translation or the AI, it's 100% accurate. But if there's some other texts that have, have cultural references, then semantically, grammatically, it's correct.
Yeah.
But they didn't capture the meaning, right? So the semantic.
Yeah.
How do you see that, and how do you fix it?
The semantics has always been an issue for AI. If maybe you've seen this on LinkedIn, that a new concept called knowledge graphs are developed for the semantic issue of the AI, and this is essentially a different approach of how AI creates reference points for the information that is given. And for now, AI essentially can create a chain of references. I think that sometimes can be right for simpler cases, but how we try to resolve this, and again, this is we are talking about a good enough concept for a certain purpose. How we try to approach this, we try to use the best machine translation output that we can find for that particular topic, and I think that also helps a lot for the AI to not go too far off in terms of editing the machine translated content. But then again, it's when we deploy this MVLP, we always let the readers know, hey, this is not a human translated text, and we actually had a discussion with Stefan earlier that we are trying to work on a concept where the readers can actually submit feedback on the site, and I think this is what Amazon did, right, Stefan?
Yeah, this is
when they essentially they they canceled any human translations throughout certain verticals of their content. They disclaimed that this is not done by humans. If you have any suggestions, just write them down. And essentially what it allows is you create a short form. It pinpoints from which site, from which article or site it comes from, and then there's the human explanation, and that actually makes the adjustments of the MVLP much more purposeful as well, because users have read it, they have such suggestion. You don't have to agree to it if it's wrong, but there's all the approach comes from a problem that's presented by the reader.
Yeah, Microsoft does that too, and they have some new. I was just there yesterday for an assignment, so I did. There's a lot of things coming up down the pipe. That it's right now it's only open to enterprises at a high level, and they're way. It's always because I do for both Amazon, so they're actually kind of competing, and I think Microsoft right now it has the edge. But what you're saying is right, because if you're training, even the suggestions, the problem that I have with suggestions from users or consumers is that you can actually validate if it's right. You can have an idea because everybody has an opinion, thinking that it's right, but sometimes it goes from the oral language and the written language, the formal and informal, that sometimes just because they say it this way, and for localization we have to make sure that it's kind of balanced. So and so I think if you're using a machine translation or an AI, I think it's all about the data, right, that you're collecting, because we use here in the courts now, we're starting to use in the state of Washington a lot of the forms for the lawyers and things that it's standard. You have that data, so the AI or the machine translation can actually create, you just say, create this, and the whole, the position or whatever gets, right? So are you doing the same when you're training the machine? Or
it's probably not as precise as legal, because legal will have like a preset, as you said, preset documents that are done the same way every time. What we try to do is we try to gather as much as the existing translation content. For example, if we've done a translation of a platform of around 200,000 words, that's enough to start training or fine-tuning rather the AI, so it starts to act as a translator of that kind of content. So there exists some reference point between the platform and the help content. So I think it's a good starting point, but there's loads to test and do in that regard. And and in terms of the feedback, what you mentioned it's actually, you're very, very correct in that regard. And I think that's where the language companies can actually find value, because the feedback doesn't go maybe through the client, but the feedback could actually go to the translation agency. So the adjustments could be done based on the reports of the users, and then you can just invoice your client at the end of the month of, look what we did this month, what were the feedback that we gathered, and just so it's also another way to QA using the community around the content who's reading it.
And I think you said something also that I wasn't quite clear in the beginning, that you were saying that sometimes you cater directly in your something working with a company to globalize everything. Are you working also with the core team to make sure that the company can, so we're giving them feedback on which steps to take so they can go global with the language and all the financial parts?
That's a very fresh approach. So everyone's really cautious around that, because localization has never participated in these operations before, and so
you might actually get a seat around the table one of these days.
Maybe.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, Julia.
Do you ever get a chance to curate the source content? or to advise the people writing the source content on how to write text that is clear. Because there was I saw a very interesting thing, but it was quite a few years ago now at TechCom in Germany, and it was a company from Romania, I think, who had set up this feedback from the translators to the original authors. It was all done anonymously, but what if the translators working in the different languages on the author's text, if they had any questions, it got sent back to the original authors. And this, I think, was a very, very good idea. It didn't seem to sort of expand very far, but I think it would have been absolutely marvelous, because translators are the people who are looking at the original text and seeing, and then if you build up a body of well-translated text on which you can have your AI working, I mean, that would seem to be an ideal situation.
If I understand correctly, you're referring to translators being actually impactful on how the source looks like, right?
Sending their feedback or questions when they come across a piece of text that's not clear, or it could be written better, because nowadays it's so important that the text flows and that it engages the audience. But if the original is a bit difficult and sort of long sentences and this kind of thing, this can be problematic. And to advise your customers on to have to set up a system like that should help them a great deal.
Very sensitive topic again. I think customers tend to be very, very, very sensitive about their content writing, and you might be right that translators can make it sometimes make it better, but we have to understand that maybe if these suggestions come from 13 different languages or 20 different languages, it might be a lot of work, and it would definitely create friction, some sort of if we try to tell them how to do their job. I see some issues with that. Maybe the other part is of course the purpose of the content. I think if you are talking about like a free form content such as these help articles or learning centers and things like that, there might be some more freedom in that regard. But if you are talking about maybe software strings and things like that, I think there's very little we can do. I think the content is created there and adjusted there in a way that it works for the software, and what we can do to the best of our ability is to facilitate that in our translations.
I have a follow-up, and then actually that's something that I think we all could start working and bridging the gap, especially with agencies, right? So when I worked in-house, okay, two examples, one for Aldous, localizing PageMaker, okay, so I was the IPM. I had, so it's evangelizing in having, of course, I had to outsource all the translations to the countries, right? And then we had the in-house, but we created from the start a style guide, and the translators will give us a lot of feedback. We will take that feedback. We're all talking all the languages that we're doing. We also had the luxury to have the core team there, right? So we always have the direct channel of giving feedback, especially if, if it was ill-written in English, we would say, hey, can you kind of, because it won't make sense if I translate this way.
Okay.
Because you can't fix, you're not supposed to change the source, but you can give feedback to the core. And depending on how you communicate and you have access to that, a direct line, I never had problems from the core team or clients that I'm working directly improving that, in part because it's their message. They want to sell the product, and if it's well done, they're going to do it. Another one was with Getty Images, right? It was the same. We had teams outside, or even Amazon. I had people, most of I do Portuguese. So a lot of translation, the bulk was done in Brazil, but then I would come back and review, but I was in-house or a consultant in-house. So I have direct contact with the core. So I'm always in the meetings with them and say, because, you know, it's that process of internationalization. They need to know if the product is going to be global, they have to do their ways, you know, plain English or different ways of writing, not hard coding, you know, so we can get to the strings and all of that. The problem that I see when I am a freelance translator working with an agency, the feedback to the source doesn't get there. So I think the agencies would need to actually step up and have this direct line with the client and really evangelize and educate them. Say, listen, it's your product. I want to make sure you have success, but this is the feedback that we're getting. It's not just, you don't have to say it's from the translators, or because you already got the feedback from the translators. You created a style guide for the client and everything, and you can say, hey, this would be better. Can we fix something because this is ambiguous in the way you're writing? And if we translate, we don't know which way to go. So I think that open channel and clear communication with the client, it's very important. And I think that's what it's missing in our profession right now, is that communication between, because the link, you know, the agency is the middleman, right, between the translators and the client. So if we can have this streamlined, a direct line, I think it will help. That's just how I see it in my 20 plus years.
I think with the introduction of AI, the disparity grows even bigger, because I think the use of AI just in a way alienates the human interaction between the translators, between the agency and the client, and I think
But that is not necessarily the case. I mean,
right.
If you're using the right tools, the right translation tools, and you've got 2, 20, 30 translators working on the same text in different languages, underneath the tool, a kind of WhatsApp, where the translators, when they come to a sentence that they're not sure about, don't know how to reinterpret it, they can put a message in there, which will be seen by all the other people working on the same text. And they, some of the translators may say, no, but it means this, and they will discuss it between them. If they don't manage to do that, the project manager will see what's going on and then decide if there is anything there to send on, to get back to the customer, the original person who wrote this text, to sort of say, look, I think we've got a problem with a couple. It's not everybody that's writing to them, but she is assessing what the translator's reaction is in the various languages, and the problem may be only in certain languages, because languages vary a great deal. But it makes the translators feel much more part of the whole thing, and that they're working together, and they feel much happier working in this kind of way, because they're cooperating and they're discussing translation that they're all doing in their own room, in their own place, with this tool. It really does improve a great deal the
Yeah, and this is something that we used to do. We had meetings every week with all different languages and say, hey, we're finding this problem in our language. Do you find, you know, in the Romance languages? And we discuss, and then we all agree and create a style guide that goes out, because we already had the feedback from the translators for thousands of translators. The thing with the AI at Amazon or Microsoft, where they do the post QA, right? So, but again, it's educating the client and how to use AI and how to do the post editing. So I don't believe that anything has changed from machine translations to AI. You still have to do the post editing and communication. It's just educating the client how they're using, because the major companies, they're not using the chat DDP that it's they're way ahead. I mean, it has really advanced. I mean, I've seen in a couple of weeks with Amazon and Microsoft. I mean, it's amazing what the tools can do. But again, there's that core that educates them, the linguists that are there to educate. And so it's just creating a core group that knows about the languages to give the feedback of the AI. And then the AI is improving, getting all that. And the type of data that you're utilizing too has to be high quality, right? Not just garbage, because then if you input garbage, you're going to get garbage back, right? So
yeah, but for example, we are talking about a lot of customer facing content, but for example, in multinational organizations, I would disagree that AI has actually been a very good facilitator of internal communication as well, because normally companies did not translate every piece of internal message between the branches of the company. And yeah, I think having this sort of model actually helps us create a better communication between the departments in the international setting. So I was
So
just
you anticipated breaking down some of the silos that we've had within the organizations. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, for example, I think the war in Ukraine is also a great facilitator and an example of what happens with the workforce in factories. For example, factories in Germany, we just recently had a discussion with a client prospect that essentially had a massive influx of Ukraine workers in their German factories, and all these engines and machines are not done in a Ukrainian way, in Ukrainian language. So it had to be done quickly and in a very adjustable way. So a model like this can translate these messages that are usually, I don't know, 16 symbols long, then are just followed by an explanation what it means. And I think models like these have a really great potential in terms of facilitating communication with the multilingual workers as well.
I
I just
you
want
familiar with?
to,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
hi, sorry. I just want to ask, just getting back to some of the metrics. I'm looking at one of the articles that you wrote, where you mentioned 100,000 words. What is a good number? Because I come from the African side of things, and there the data sets are small. You don't get good data sets for it. So what if you say it's a minimum viable product, what would be the metrics of a good start versus a bad start or an okay start, or
yeah.
And do you see for certain languages that you mentioned 13 languages, do you see listen 10,000 or 100,000 does not work well for this language? We'll need 500,000, for instance. Just if you can expand a little bit about the actual metrics of the data.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's so far we've had the luck of working with languages that get a lot of attention. So it means that the engines used are normally better as well. So the outputs are better. In terms of the language you mentioned, I'm not sure if always the amount of data is what facilitates the quality of the product. For us, for example, looking at the top languages, we identified that something around 100,000 words is impactful enough for the engine to start acting as a translator of that type of content would. So this is also subject to a lot of testing and documentation that we have to write, because we are trying to put everything down as we go through it. And yeah, it's a very fresh and raw concept, so there's a lot of information that we are still trying to gather. And in terms of rarer languages or languages that do not see the attention of machine translation, that much. I don't know. It might be the cause of how the language is structured. Maybe we can correlate the issues of AI understanding that language to why, for example, machine translation is not grasping these languages as well. And I'm familiar, for example, one of the languages that we work with not machine translation setting is Finnish, because it's drastically different in terms of how the structuring looks like, and it's very, very hard to apply these models to languages that do not resemble structurally the source at all. So yeah, it might be the data that designates how good the model works, but it might just be the language specifics as well.
Very interesting. Michael, you've been waiting for a long time. You had a question?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a question. I mean, I think everything that I've heard kind of coming in about 25 minutes later than at the start. But no, I think there's a lot of great things going on right now as far as like almost the theoretical kind of things that are going on to test out different theories and see what's working and find out the best way for, feedback loops, whether it be for the source content or the localized content. It doesn't really make a difference. I just think that we're still at such at the infancy stage of things that I think it's hard to just sit there and say, okay, well, this is the way it's going to be done for the foreseeable future. I think that's completely short-sighted if we start to think too much like that. I think that what I'm seeing anyways is that where I find it exciting is that, like, from a creative standpoint, if I just take that as an example, I'm seeing great things where people are, creating 3 or 4 or 5 different choices, right? And then from those 3 or 4 or 5 different choices, they're then creating a completely independent one from that as a creative content writer, if they're doing the source content, and as a localizer, if they're doing the localization. So again, that's what I find super exciting from a creative kind of perspective. And that's where I see kind of things heading, but also the different types of content, right? As part of that content ecosystem for an enterprise level client, right? I think someone said it earlier, but said something about, about how the client mentioned, I think Juliet, you might have said something like along these lines, is that, the client doesn't always want to be instructed to do X, Y, or Z. They know their content best. And who are we to tell them how to, update their source content? At the same time, though, if we've worked with them for, the past few years and everybody's at a level of local maturity and everything else, then great things can kind of happen. And I think they can kind of evolve from that point further. And just a lot of people, I think, are just kind of looking for a final solution in things.
Maybe this is the parting question that we should ask Didzis some advice on. Does he think that, kind of along the things that Michael just said, that hyper-personalization now is getting a real chance, and that companies actually are going to be able to adapt their product to specific people? That kind of aligns in an odd way with the mantra of localization of all time, that we want to adapt our message and our product to our audience. Now, I think there's an opportunity to do that in a way that we hadn't really anticipated, not just to a particular culture or a particular language, but really personalize it more to maybe a specific customer with specific expectations.
Yeah. That sounds
I think he nailed that. I think you nailed it on that stuff. I mean, the hyper personalization aspect, is that's the opportunity, right? And that's what I find super exciting. I mean, just imagine, like, you used to say you can't be all things to all people, but what if that's,
well, maybe you can, in the future you will be able to be all things to all people. Didzis, what do you think of that?
I think that sounds a bit creepy at this point. If I imagine, sometimes there's these weird coincidences that you you peel an orange and it has this like a little sticker on it, and after 5 minutes on your Instagram you see like a commercial with that exact brand. I become immediately reserved about that kind of personalization, so to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm having a
but
conversation with a family member in front of my Alexa about a specific thing, and then I turn into YouTube and there's an ad for that specific
and then
thing
it
we just
arrives in
talked
2 days,
about 3
right?
minutes before, and it is a bit creepy for sure. At the
Yeah,
same
but
token, it's really good that I can turn to my YouTube and I get offered up just content that I'm really interested in. And so the 20 minutes I have to watch some TV before I go to bed, I'm actually watching something I'm really interested in. So it's kind of the two sides of the coin are right there, I think.
Or providing you stuff that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of to open your
Exactly.
mind so you don't sit in an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I see happening. Like there's a yin to the yang, and that's the point.
Yeah, but Michael, what you said is very right. LangOps currently lacks a lot of methodology and actual cases and information to work with, and at the same time, this approach to language operations actually it rewards curiosity and it rewards creativity in terms of, if we think about not just applying a single TMS to a client, but rather than thinking of the components that create like a better architecture of localization, things like that. Actually, what makes me the most excited about LangOps is that it allows us to create new products that solve problems that we could not do before. So yeah, what I am inviting is to just be curious about it and be open-minded and contribute. It's a new thing that happens, and I'm not sure if it's going away, but yeah, I invite everyone to think about this and yeah,
They should
contribute if possible.
connect. They should connect with you, Didzis, if they're not already
Oh, yeah.
connected on LinkedIn. And we should all connect with those people that we're not connected with. That's kind of in the framework of our LocDiscussion and the networking. This was a really fascinating episode of LocDiscussion. I think we were a bit worried in the beginning. Remember, this is whether this was going to be too technical a topic to fill an hour with, and whether we would actually have enough content to talk about. But this has been one of the most animated sessions that we've had, and it shows that I think the industry is moving along with the new developments, and we're very interesting in things that are going on. Thank you so very much for sharing an hour with us this late in your Friday. I hope you're gonna go have a beer or a glass of wine after this.
I'm gonna go walk my dog probably. He's
in the
sleeping next to
snow,
me.
probably, right?
Yeah,
in the snow. I'm going to go back to work for a couple more hours. Some of us are still in the working day. Thank you so very much, everybody, for joining us. People that are joining us from all over the world. We have Johan back from South Africa, so that makes me happy to have Africa represented as well this afternoon. And thank you so very much for joining us. We'll be back next month. And yeah, until next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.